Azaitar beat a bunch of guys, then couldn't get potatoes into his room. They sent him away from the UFC. Then he fought, you guessed it, Matt Frevola.
The Wrecking Crew.
Matt Frevola is just going to be catching, well, everybody that fought him is catching strays out there in the corridors during this week. But Azaitar loses that fight, and now he comes into a matchup against the young upstart of Argentina, Francisco Prado, who on short notice took on Jamie Mullarkey in Australia, did not win. We had a lot to say about Francisco Prado before that UFC debut. So it on back to a clip before he fought Jamie Mullarkey. We have Argentina's own Francisco Prado making a short notice UFC debut, a little bit over a month to get ready for this matchup for the 20-year-old champion of Samurai Fight House. You might have heard of that promotion before. Ailin Perez was a champ over there, made her debut last year. Prado taking on Jamie Mullarkey in this matchup. And if you talk about phenoms in the prospect world, Francisco Prado is one of those fighters. Every win, a finish. He's taken on a varying level of competition. But in this matchup, Matt, like you look at uber prospects coming in very, very young. You think of like the Chase Hoopers, the Sage Northcutts. Now we have Francisco Prado. I did a lot of tape study, and a lot of it's readily available. You kind of dissect the record out there of some of his opponents. Combined opponent record of the 11 wins is 61-48, so it is what it is. His best win's probably his last one over Jose Barrios Vargas, who was 13-3. And then I went through his record, and it's kind of a salty 13-3. And then I went through Adrian Peroni, who was 6-0, and it's a really salty win. So you go down through it, you watch a lot of these fights, Matt, and Prado goes through a lot of adversity in some of them, and he ends up winning them all.
Prado's probably the more, I don't know, the flashier out of these two. I guess it doesn't take much to be flashier than Jamie Mullarkey. But if Prado can make this fight, I guess, just over really quick, he should have a great opportunity to. But that seems to be the story with Jamie Mullarkey. He's like a Julian Rosa. He's like a Damon Jackson. Like, if you hit him early, you might be able to finish him. But if he does get over that initial threshold, if he can weather that first storm, Jamie Mullarkey then gets to show you all of the skills that he does have, and he becomes a much more difficult fight as a result.
Well, Matt, for Francisco Prado, for this uber prospect, you go back and you watch his fights again. His last time out, he took on Blue Jays ace Jose Barrios Vargas, and in that matchup, they're fighting in a laser show. Like, I didn't really understand that one. There's lights
like a bowling
going.
alley.
I thought, like, is this like a video effect they added on after the fact? But the lights are on the guys, so it was there. But you watch that fight, and I mean, he moves a lot. You go back and you watch a lot of these Prado fights. I think he's added an element of, I move my head, I move my body all the time to try and show different looks to disguise what I'm going to do. But when he goes out there and he decides to throw, he throws everything into his shots. And he throws hooks, he throws a lot of looping shots, he throws a lot of really good kicks. And he ends up going out there and just has some crazy striking blitzes. But I went through and I watched a lot of these fights. The fight against Peroni was for the belt. That's when he challenged for it. It was on one of those really slippery mats. The other thing was Samurai Fight House. Some fights are in really small cages. Some fights are in the biggest cage you've ever seen in your entire life. So against Peroni in that one, I mean, he goes out there, he's dancing on the balls of his feet. Again, he gets caught by a guillotine. The whole first round, he's in a guillotine. And then the second round, he gets the takedown. He goes out there and he looks really good. But in a lot of these fights, like, Prado's takedown defense has been tested, and it's not that great. Prado tends to tire as the first round goes on, and then in the second round, the wheels completely fall off. And going through a lot of these fights, the fight that he had against Hugo Nogueira, which they list as it's Hugo and then his nickname, if you do go back and watch the fight, in that one, Hugo looked like a blown-up bantamweight with a little bit of a belly. And he was completely outstriking Prado. He ends up going out there in the first round, just absolutely blitzes him. And then Prado comes back in the second round. You might say, well, Craig, he's a young guy. He's 20. He's won every single fight. He's won them all by finish, and some of them in the second round and further on. Yes, he has, but he hasn't really taken on the greatest level competition. And I just think parts and parcels, they're all there for Prado. I think this is way too big of a matchup for him against Mullarkey. And so what did we learn from Francisco Prado in that fight against Jamie Mullarkey? Because we knew that if he decided to keep the cool sunglasses on and maybe rock like a Bret Hart intro, things would get done. When he goes wild, things go well. And I'm going to be interested to see what we get out of Prado training out of Killcliff for this fight. Because, again, Killcliff, the Goat Shed, he's really been around Southern Florida. You know the Goat Shed for not just Jillian Robertson, but a lot of young and up-and-coming fighters. And I think that's going to be good for Prado. But I always find it interesting when young fighters like this that have had success doing the thing that got them to the dance start to get away from them and maybe play it a little safe, because I think we saw that out of Prado against Jamie Mullarkey. It wasn't as wild as normal, and I know he's a big underdog, and I know it was on short notice, 30-27s all across the board. And then Jamie Mullarkey takes on a short notice guy the next time out and he gets knocked out.
But it's like fighting Julian Erosa. You can look terrible against him, you can look amazing against him. It's just some of those fighters. Jamie Mullarkey's one of those guys. Yes, you can stop him early and look phenomenal, but if he is able to get past that initial threshold and sort of really implement his game, and that was what Mullarkey was really able to do against Prado in that matchup. You're right. Prado was not his aggressive version of himself, and Mullarkey made him pay for it, not only with the striking, with the takedowns too, and that was the nice thing to see out of... I'm just spewing over Jamie Mullarkey right now, because Mullarkey was able to get him thinking, and I do think that's going to be a really important part of his fighting in the UFC up until this point, because he's still a really young guy with a ton of room to grow, and if he is able to use his aggressiveness to his benefit, we saw Matt Frivola drop Ottman Azaitar, and I know Matt Frivola has had kind of a weird power surge as of late, but still, I don't necessarily consider Matt Frivola as one of the top tier power punchers of this division. But for Ottman Azaitar, this is what I have trouble with. I was really impressed by his regional film. Like, he's finishing a bunch of guys, he's looking really good, and then he has that performance against Matt Frivola. So I'm kind of battling myself in my mind as to how much should I diminish Ottman based off that fight. And that's just me being completely honest.
It's like when you're doing a science fair and you're a kid and you got all that power from the pickles and then you're trying to make a battery out of potatoes. It didn't work for Ottman Azaitar, and I think the time away really did cost him a lot. And now... he's 8 months removed from that fight against Matt Frivola. How's he going to look against Francisco Prado? Because he's hanging out with the boys, Ottman Azaitar on his IG.
The flip side is, to your Prado point, I could say, well, Azaitar just got blasted and now he might not have a chin and we just don't know what version we're going to get. Like, I just think it's difficult to judge Prado based off his last fight. I really do.
Boudoir photography on the prelims, getting blasted on the main card. Matt, for Ottman Azaitar, it will be interesting to see what we get because in his UFC debut, looked very good. Performance bonuses against Teemu Packalén and Kama Worthy. So again, this is a tricky fight where you got a very, very young fighter in Francisco Prado taking on the known commodity in Ottman Azaitar, the better of the two brothers, I would say. So far in their UFC careers, Matt, we have a look at the Topology votes. Prado, slight favorite, didn't know that. I'm going to say over under 65% Prado with the fans. I don't know what they're going to do.
I'm going to say over. They've all been pretty...
Look at that.
Wow.
1,183 total votes. So
like
it's not exact and it's not perfect. 50% Prado. 80% by knockout, 50% Azaitar, 71% by knockout. Matt, so this one is a really, really tough one. Who do you have in the matchup? Because for Prado, we saw him get himself caught in bad positions on the regional scene when he grappled heavy.
Yeah.
Azaitar's not a grappler, he's a boxer. And for Azaitar, we haven't really seen him get much issue with the grapplers, or given much issue with the grapplers. He's a guy that trains with, a guy who fought in a main event not long ago. Abus Smagomedov. What happened there? Matt, I have a hard time with picks, so who do you have here?
Against my better judgment, I think I'm going to pick Ottman Azaitar.
Let's go! Okay, so do I.
The thing about Prado is, I did really enjoy his game leading up to the UFC, and I don't think you can completely throw him out as a prospect based on his last performance. But if he is just a step slow against a guy like Ottman, and if he is allowing Ottman to lead the dance, and I do think that's really going to be the important thing. If Prado's the one backing up in this matchup, he is a much lesser version of himself when he's behind the 8 ball than when he's in front of it. So for that reason, I have Ottman.
It's a tough one, because Francisco Prado, you can see it there. He's 21. All those wins by finish. He's only going to get better. The Goat Shed's a good gym to accentuate his skills. I have a hard time with the whole hand speed in the boxing against a guy like Ottman Azaitar. But if Prado can keep his foot on the gas, Azaitar's good striking off the back foot. But we'll see how it plays out in this one. Matt, both of us going with Ottman Azaitar to get the win in the matchup. K. DeMercy is saying, horrible card. You're darn tootin' it is, Matt. The next matchup, Norma Dumont fighting Chelsea Chandler. How is she? I don't know. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.